Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I've been so excited for this podcast. Matthew, he has this larger than life personality. We first met through LinkedIn. We're both ex-Bank of America. Both of us transitioned into entrepreneurship. He's now started Foundation Media with a couple other partners, and that's mainly what he spends most of his time on now. Matthew, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
What's your story been like? How does someone kind of give up the whole dream? Like, you go to the college and you get the big job offer at the big corporate job. How does someone kind of give that all up and go into entrepreneurship?
Something I've tried to anchor the decision making on recently has been towards minimizing regret. And something I've always wanted to do is travel the world and see more places. And I feel like it's never been easier now than ever in history to do that and to do that while working and making money online. And so just given the opportunity and the desire that I had, I felt like I had to go for it. But yeah, like you said, it was definitely a big risk to a lot of people, myself included, to leave kind of the stable trajectory and amazing path that I was on in the corporate world. And it definitely required betting on myself and, not listening to doubts along the way, which will always creep in. But it's been a really good year trying to get our business to a really good, stable position so that I'm able to do these travels. And now I just started, a week or two ago on these travels. So it's a really good time you're catching me at now where things are transitioning once again in a big way.
Most successful people you talk to, they all talk about betting on themselves, right? So I think it's really important to hone in on that and kind of take that chance while you're young. And, for the most part, there's really not much to lose, right? Because you're still young, if you make a mistake, you can always go back and get on the horse. But I think success loves confidence and it loves speed. So kudos to you. Also, most old people, you hear them say that they don't regret what they did. It's usually they regret what they didn't do in their life. Getting back into the whole entrepreneurship thing, I noticed you started a clothing brand in college. So was that entrepreneurial vibe just always creeping in the background and you really wanted to bring it to light?
Yes, I think so. I remember selling Pokemon cards and t-shirts and all sorts of things as a kid. In college, I started a clothing brand to hone my graphic design skills and to learn how to sell and how to design products and negotiate with suppliers. It was a very small company. People asked me when I graduated if I was going to keep doing it full time, and there was just no way financially. But it was very fun. I had a lot of support through my school that made it a really good learning experience. And as a finance major in school, I wanted more hands-on experience. And at a giant corporation, you get a lot of learning of how to operate in a large corporation, but no learning on how to run a small business. And so running that small company of just myself was a really fun way to get my feet wet in entrepreneurship. I had to learn everything for myself, including the income tax, the sales tax, which ties into what you do. And it was all very confusing to me, but would be even easier now with the AI tools that we have. But yeah, it was a great foray into entrepreneurship and set me up to have this bug or this itch for it, I guess. And I've always wanted to do something bigger, but never knew what that would be until I found my business partners here at Foundation Media. I just got very lucky with the timing where I knew they were starting up the digital marketing agency and I was working in corporate, but I started helping them on nights and weekends and basically negotiated a way in for myself as a partner role. They're the two ex-Google marketers that started the business and I jumped on as quickly as I could to work with them. And it's been a blast, the three of us growing the company this past year. And like I said, now it's to a point where I'm able to continue doing what I'm doing, but travel while I'm at it. And I think I kind of have to go for it,
So it sounds like it happened by accident, right? So you started working and maybe 1 hour's turned into 2 hours. Is that how it happened? Or was there a breaking point? One day you woke up and you were like, no more, I can't do this corporate lifestyle anymore.
Yeah, I think for me, it was about the freedom and the travel aspect. And I actually very much liked what I was doing at Bank of America. I was on a fantastic team working with, honestly, the management team of the company on earnings and very interesting things. But it didn't lend itself well to freedom, like I said. So I wouldn't be able to go take 6 months off to go move to Europe, which is not really an option without taking a leave of absence or quitting. And so I knew that I'd have to design a company, a role, a business for myself to be able to make that happen. So that's kind of where the desire more came from. I had great coworkers, a great team, and there's definitely challenges with working in a giant organization, but a lot of things are figured out for you in that regard. So I didn't realize how stress-free it can be to exist, I think, in a giant corporation where a lot of the stuff has been figured out for you versus in entrepreneurship, you're trying to figure everything out every single day. And there's just infinite amounts of prioritization and learning that has to occur. But yeah, I think for me, it was more about the freedom, designing the life I wanted. And like you said, too, I don't want to regret things that I didn't do. And so just making a way for that to happen.
Yeah, it sounds like you like kind of worked your way backwards, right? You decided, hey, this is what I want my personal life to look like, and how can I build my business life around that?
That's a great way to explain it. I think it's a good frame for solving problems is, how much money do I need to go live in Europe and travel? It's actually not that much. Like you don't need a grand slam $1 trillion business to make that happen. You can live comfortably in Europe with thousands of dollars per month if you have some extra cushion of savings. So I knew very early that I didn't need to make $1 million out of the gate in entrepreneurship to make this happen. But I think the business model that we have as a marketing agency lends itself well to what I'm doing, because as long as we keep doing great work for our clients, we'll keep attracting more clients and retaining them and just continuing to grow the business over time, kind of naturally as a snowball.
Yeah.
But we didn't have to start with 100 clients. So I knew what we needed, which was the certain monthly income goal to go move to Europe for myself. And then, like you said, was able to work backwards into a business model, into the amount of hours I might need to work or what I would have to do to make that happen.
I love that because there's so many successful people that they keep going and they keep going and they don't know when to stop because they don't really have a finish line in mind. So when you guys decided to start up Foundation Media, what was the main problem you guys were trying to solve and who were you trying to solve it for?
So we're a digital ads agency. Pretty exclusively, we just manage ads for businesses. Usually it's e-commerce or service companies looking to scale. We just saw time and time again, and my partners spent 5+ years at Google each in digital ads over there. They're very much experts in the Google Ads platform and digital ads in general. We just saw a lot of business owners that had no idea how their ads worked. They didn't know what their agencies were doing in their accounts. We saw year-long, 2, 3, 4-year-long contracts where the agencies would run the ads in my opinion, a very predatory way, where they would create their own separate account, their own separate dashboards, and kind of hide the real data from their clients. And so from the beginning, we just took a very honest approach with shorter minimum term contracts. We use clients' own accounts. We actually help them and coach them and consult them through what we're doing, even if that may result at some point in them leaving us to do it for themselves, and really just take the most honest and transparent approach possible. So that's kind of what we were trying to solve against, was predatory or bad digital marketing practices where agencies take full control, don't explain what they're doing, and the client's account suffers because of it. When you have a small business or a medium-sized company, oftentimes the owner is the one that's fronting the bill for the ad spend. And they know it's an investment to grow their company. But if you're wasting $20, $30, $40,000 per month on your ad spend, you're not seeing good returns, that's going to affect the owner's personal life because that's going to affect their take-home pay. And so we try to solve against that to make it much more of an investment and to actually grow their business in a transparent and honest way.
It sounds like the way you've scaled so fast is just by being the one honest person in like a sea full of sharks trying to just be predatory. Is that has that been the key to success up until now? And is that going to be the key to scaling to the next level, or are you guys taking a different approach now?
It's a great question. Yeah, we definitely have honed in on our subject matter expertise. Like my partners worked on the teams that designed the Google Ads product. And so we definitely have a very intimate understanding of how the products work. They don't work on those teams anymore. Obviously, they're over here, but they understand how it comes together in a way that other folks from the outside may not. Like myself, for example, I don't come from a marketing background, but having learned directly from them, I can explain and coach people through how the algorithms work, how to get the best performance in a lot of ways that people don't set up correctly from the beginning. We called ourselves Foundation Media because we really aim to get the foundation and the ads account correct from the beginning. And it sounds corny, but the 20% of time you spend on setup drives 80% of the results. And so by doing it the right way from the beginning, we can ensure better results. And that's kind of how we scaled to the beginning, or at the beginning, to your point. It's just being honest and open. I think the future will continue to grow from referrals, word of mouth, networking, and that's really how we've grown organically over the past year. It's just by doing great work and getting mentioned for that. I do think that AI is getting to an interesting turning point for advertising, for marketing, and pretty much every industry. And so the way we compete against AI tools that manage ad accounts may be different than other agencies or other freelancers. But I think, of course, we'll adapt and see how it goes and continue to do good work.
Starting two businesses myself, I know it's not all rosy. What were some of the harder points, and what's one of the biggest failures or lessons you guys have learned starting the business so far?
That's a great question. And I totally agree that it's not everything you see on Instagram and LinkedIn and everything. I think one thing I did not expect was how emotional the company would be for me. I always cared about the work I was doing in corporate and wanted to do a good job, but I wasn't the ultimate stakeholder if something happened. There was a lot of managers above me up to the CEO that kind of everything rolled out to them. In entrepreneurship, it's really not that way. And so moving into my first ever role in kind of business development or sales here, I find that to be somewhat emotional in the sense of when a big deal closes, it feels amazing. And when you lose a potential prospect in the process, it feels terrible and it feels like you messed up. Combining that with the fact that entrepreneurship became my livelihood, like pretty quickly I jumped in full time on Foundation Media. And so if the business had a bad month, that means that I had a pretty bad month financially. So I think just all these emotions and figuring out how to stay steady, continue working, and not give up basically has been the real key to the success so far, which is just staying in the game long enough to continue to see results of compounding and to not give in to those negative emotions or negative feelings because it's pretty scary and it can feel isolating. And so I think it's important to have other entrepreneurs around me and folks that are older than me to tell me it's okay. Everyone feels like this. Like you just need to keep going. And it's something I don't think I understood before going full time into it. And I don't think most people understand it either unless they've done entrepreneurship for themselves full time. It's just how emotional it can be.
That kind of caught me off guard too, especially starting the firm because I'll sign on 10 clients one day and then the next day my phone won't ring. So I'm like, am I doing something wrong now? But sometimes it's just about putting the work in and not even caring about the results. I know that sounds so corny and I used to hate it when people said that to me, but it's really just about knowing what the input is that you're doing and not even expecting like a number on the back end and just being grateful for whatever comes. The thing I think is so important that you said is like the whole mentorship aspect of it. I was just having a podcast with a mentor and good friend, and he's much older than me, much more successful than me, and even he was talking about starting his new company and how emotional it is, and I was like, wow, so if he's already gone through all this and he's still getting like the highs and lows, I'm like, oh, I have a long way to go, but seeing that someone else so much more successful than me is human, that like kind of makes it okay in my mind to be human too. Does that make sense?
Agree. I totally agree. Even if you know it's going to be hard and it's going to be emotional, it will still catch you off guard, I think, when it's hard and when
Yeah,
it's emotional. Like
100%.
I just moved out of my apartment a few weeks ago, and even when I budgeted twice the amount of time I thought it would take me, it still took me twice that amount of time. So certain things you just aren't really going to be prepared for it until it actually happens. And there's really no way around it. So I like what you said of just continuing to stay disciplined and maybe try to detach a bit emotionally from the results because you can't control everything.
One more question on the business before I ask you about your interesting new lifestyle. I know as an agency owner you probably get this a lot. How do you deal with a price objection when someone's like, "Why do you deserve to be making that much?" or "Hey, that's a little bit out of my budget range. That's too high." Like, how do you deal with those kind of objections?
Good question. We definitely have priced ourselves towards the premium end. So as far as agencies go, you'll see a lot of folks on Upwork, freelancers, very cheap agencies that go for volume plays that might charge a couple $100s per month to manage your ad accounts. Obviously, you're going to get a certain level of support with that spend. We price ourselves in the thousands of dollars per month, that kind of monthly management fee retainer area. So it's a big jump compared to the kind of freelancer model or consultant on Upwork that you can find. But it's not as much as giant agencies that have 10,000 employees and a team of 10 on your account. So there's a certain level of company that we work with in kind of the 5 million to 30 million revenue range that fits well for what we can do and what they can afford in terms of our skill set. But we do run into the price objection a lot, especially with smaller businesses. I think at the end of the day, it comes down to what they're looking for. If they're looking for someone who can push buttons in their account, may or may not be correct, and show some sort of results, but without much concept of how good that is, then you can find that for cheaper than what we offer. But for us, we kind of just push back with here's our background, here's our experience, here's why we charge what we can. Here's a vast handful of case studies showing that we're good at what we do to kind of just back up with more proof. And then we kind of just let folks go from there. So we're not aggressively pushy in our sales tactics, I wouldn't say, but really just pointing out to folks that, hey, our contracts are month to month. So when you see these 15 clients that are currently stoked to keep working with us each month, like they're choosing that every month actively and they're happy to pay us because they're getting great returns of 3 times, 5 times, 10 times return on their ad spend and on their spend with us. So I think folks can infer for themselves whether it's worth it or not. And we'll try to come in as that strategic partner if that's hopefully what they're looking for.
Where I shifted my mindset was I hate when people give me price objections. Either tell me yes or no, but don't try to devalue my well, what I feel our firm and our processes are worth. So that's what I kind of try to do now in my personal life. If someone tells me a price and it's just out of my budget, I'll just tell them, hey, it doesn't make sense for me right now. I'm not even going to ask you for a discount because I don't want to insult you. But if and when that is in my price range, I'll make sure to give you a call and I'll come back to you. And I think that's like a good amicable way to kind of leave things, because at the end of the day, you're right. If someone is going to be spending thousands of dollars with you guys, the budget is going to need to be so much more to have it make sense for them, and not everyone falls into that category, unfortunately. So yeah, great insight there. So kind of switching gears into your personal life, you just moved everything out of your apartment. You are, first of all, I guess this first leg is the United States. You're halfway across the country right now, and then you're going to Europe. And I think you were talking about this earlier. Like, you really wanted to travel. What made you decide to do that? And like what's that itch that you're trying to scratch with traveling?
I've just always loved it, I think, and it's never been easier, like I said, to make it happen now, as you've experienced as well. Growing up, I loved family vacations. I was very fortunate that my parents would use extra savings each year to go on vacation as opposed to buying a nicer house or nicer cars or something. At the time I was like, man, I wish we had like a movie theater in our house or whatever. But looking back, I'm so grateful that we had the chance to see national parks and new cities and countries together. So I think from the beginning of my life, I was instilled that you should explore and you should learn from new cultures and new people and see new things. And so I just continued that through college. I took a few study abroad courses where I got to go for a month at a time to Italy and New Zealand, but I never did a full semester in the traditional way because I just loved my campus so much and wanted to stay there. So I think I have this lack of a longer than a month travel experience that I also want. And so that's kind of what I'm gearing up for this year, is to be able to take bigger swings and go for longer periods of time to just get more immersed and see more things. But I think I've really just always had this love for travel instilled in me, and feel like I need to do it now while I'm young. Like we've been talking about minimizing regret. It's the right time to do it.
That's awesome that you got that experience at such a young age with parents who, credit to them, taught you to love experiences and love people versus just loving things or wanting maybe the newest shoes or wanting maybe the newest t-shirt, the cool t-shirt that came out. Where I fell in love with travel is when I realized that I could work and travel at the same time. It never clicked to me that you could do both. Have you kind of been having that same realization of how, not, I don't want to say easy, but how simple it really is to run a business remotely and staying productive while traveling? Like, how do you do that?
Great question. I'm definitely still learning. And I think that's why I continued to have my lease in my apartment back in Charlotte, North Carolina this past year as we've been building up the company. I didn't want to change too many things all at once. But for me now, I'm a couple weeks into traveling while building the company. And I think at the end of the day, yeah, you just need to boil it down to simple inputs and prioritize your calendar and do the things that are going to move the needle forward in the business. And that is the best way, I think, to make progress while moving. But I need to learn some things from you as well, too, in terms of how to prioritize my schedule and my to-do list, because I'm sure I'll have a lot to learn. But I think that's a really good point that you made. Like, I always saw travel as vacation, and you very much have to take vacation time when you're in a corporate role to go to Europe or something. But when you can make your own rules, you can do whatever you want. And so it's much more about staying disciplined, I think, and staying focused since nobody's looking over my shoulder. But yeah, what I'm planning to do is just move the needle forward as much as I can. When I have very heavy travel days, I'll just need to get done what I can. And then other days when I'm more stable, I can really lock in and make more progress.
It really is just all about prioritizing and blocking off time. I really wish I was a genius and I wish I had a secret formula, but it really is just about, like, okay, these 4 or 5 hours I'm going to work, and then I can go walk around and see maybe a cool monument if I'm in Europe, or go to a nice park if I'm in the States traveling. Is this something that you see yourself doing long term, or maybe the Europe trip turns into an Asia trip? What are we looking to expect from you?
I think this year I definitely want to go a lot of places and do a pretty nomadic type of travel, 1 month or maybe even less at a place at a time. That way I can just see a lot this year. I don't expect to spend all year in a certain place, for example. So we'll see how far it goes before I get burnt out of that type of traveling, and then might transition to slow travel after that. But I've always seen myself settling down in the States. But again, I would love the opportunity to build my life by design and to take maybe a month every year to go to Europe or something for the rest of my life. I think that'd be fantastic. And not a lot of people are able to do something like that, so it would be a real privilege. But I think we'll see how the year goes, and I need to lean on people like you who've traveled more than me to help me stay focused and productive and find all the good spots to go to. So I'm very excited sitting at the beginning of this adventure right now.
I'm so excited for you. Obviously, not everyone's able to do it financially, but I think more people are able than they realize. they just think it's this super complex thing and they have to do a million things, but like good things start small. If you're listening to this and you're scared of traveling because you feel like you're going to fall behind in work, go take that weekend trip and then come back, and then maybe next time extend it to 4 days and then try to go for a week and still keep working, especially if you're an entrepreneur. You definitely have more say so there. So yeah, I think what you're doing is really inspiring. I think it's going to shift how a lot of people think, like in your network, people who follow you. I think a lot of people are going to get inspired, so that's awesome. Transitioning back kind of into finance and taxes. This is a bookkeeping and tax podcast, so I'm sorry to ask you a couple boring questions. So how do you think about reinvesting into the business versus paying yourself, right? That's a big kind of tug of war that us entrepreneurs have. On the one hand, you need money to live. On the other hand, you don't want to rob your business, your baby, of its potential growth. So how do you and your partner see that balance?
It's a good question. And I actually love finance and accounting and sometimes even tax stuff. So it's not boring to me. But there's four of us that work in the business. And so we all need to make sure that we continue to stay in the game, but also continue reinvesting in the company. So I think for us, we do kind of try to solve backwards to what do each of us need to make financially to continue staying in the game, and how can we take distributions based on that? But where does the business need money reinvested to grow? How much of an emergency fund or cash reserves in the business do we need? What are the doomsday scenarios that could happen, and how can we protect ourselves against that? And just factor all of those things together. I honestly love that there's trusted partners that I have in the business where we can talk about our budget and our finances together and transparently. We all know how much the business is making, how much each of us is making, and we all kind of win together. So I honestly love that aspect of it. I think it's less confusing for me, especially in my first time in full-time entrepreneurship, being with business partners to do that. I think if I was on my own, I'd be a little more unsure of how much to take out or how to take distributions, how much to leave in the business, that sort of thing, which would probably lead to me making more money personally in a solo business, but I don't know if that'd be good for the health of the company necessarily. So I think we're able to balance the health of the company very well in this situation, which will allow all of us to continue working in the business and moving things forward.
For our audience who's listening, if you're not having these conversations, whether it's with your partners or whether it's trying to watch up on YouTube videos or read on this or something, you definitely need to be having these conversations because just like Matthew said, it's all about staying in the game long enough to be the one that comes out on top. On that note, at what point do you start need to thinking about as an entrepreneur? At what point do you need to start thinking about taxes and how to maintain accurate books?
Great question. For us, we have a pretty simple business model, like I said, where our clients pay us monthly, and as long as we do a good job, they'll pay us again next month, and we'll deliver results to them. So on top of that, our main expenses are just our headcount and our salaries to ourselves and our team. And so it's not the most complicated business to understand. Financially, it's not like we have multinational suppliers and trade agreements and all sorts of things like that, or warehouse space or physical locations. We do have an accountant and a bookkeeper that we work with that has been helpful for us on the tax side and the bookkeeping side, but a lot of it we probably could do ourselves. That being said, there's a few things we would have missed if we weren't working with a great accountant and bookkeeper that even in a simple business model was still a big blessing to have. And so I think with it being most of our first times going for a big swing like this and not knowing what we don't know, we're definitely grateful that we opted to work with an accountant and a bookkeeper. It was just something that has made us sleep better at night, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in outsource whatever you don't think you can maximize your time in. This I had this email problem with Google and I spent like 3 or 4 hours on it because I was like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, I can do it. I can just put my head down and figure it out. Like 4 hours later, I just wasted half a day on this and I hit up my one friend who's like a computer wizard and he solved it in 20 or 30 minutes and I was like, I should have just done that from the beginning. So I definitely think while maybe I could have figured it out after 8 hours, or maybe if you guys could do your books, it's definitely just better and faster and more efficient to give it to someone else who does that every day. And you guys can just focus on growing and growing and growing. So with that, I'm going to go into some rapid fire questions. So my first question is, what country are you most excited to go to?
I've had Spain on my mind for years, so that's where I'm going in 2 weeks. That'll be my first international stint of this leg, so it's got to be Spain for me.
That's awesome. Yeah. What's one book that has influenced you on your journey so far?
I think the best one for me, I don't read a lot, but I do listen to a lot of podcasts. I think the best book, though, that I have read is called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel.
That's such a good book. That's such a good book. What about the podcast? What's one podcast that you can't live without?
My favorite one recently has been a podcast called Acquired, which tells the history of businesses. It's very long. It's more like a book. They do 3, 4, 5, 6 hour episodes, but you learn a lot about the history of amazing companies like Costco, Rolex, Hermes, and it's very fascinating to me.
That actually sounds really interesting. What's one piece of advice you would give to someone who's, whether they're in corporate and they're trying to break free into entrepreneurship, or where they've kind of stayed in their hometown their whole life and they're scared to travel? What's some advice you would give to that person?
I think the same thing I'm telling myself every day, which is just to minimize regret. If there's things you know you want to do, don't get in your own way. It's not to say you have to travel. Like travel's not going to be the thing for everybody. Some people might be way happier never leaving and just building up their home or their farm into something that they love. And then you should do that. But whatever you think you may regret not doing, make sure you do the thing at some point.
That's great advice for anyone who's listening. What is next for Foundation Media, my friend? And where can people reach out to connect with you, whether it's to, sign on, or whether they just want to follow along your journey?
Yeah, for Foundation Media, we'll keep growing. We have a free Google Ads course where we give away kind of our industry knowledge, and then we sell the implementation where we can manage accounts for people. So the free course is at school.com/Google Ads if you check that out. And then for me, I think it's just going to be a lot about sharing my journey, learning as I go, and continuing to grow the company while traveling and sharing that. So I'll be sharing on Instagram, on my personal newsletter, which is buildinmotion.co or .co. And across all other platforms too. So happy to connect with anybody if anyone has questions about what I'm doing or wants to do something similar for themselves as well.
Yeah, we're gonna drop those links in our show notes as well. So if you're listening to this, whenever this comes out, go to the show notes and click on one of those links to connect with Matthew. I just want to thank you for coming on. I've had a great time. I know if you've made it to the end of this episode, you're still listening. I know you've already gained a lot of knowledge and wisdom from Matthew. So yeah, thanks, man. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.